The light from 3 moons cast long shadows across the desolate plains of Morgath. The terrain, once a thriving civilization, was now nothing more than a patchwork of craters, blast zones, and twisted metal, perfect for the annual Battleground Games. In orbit, aboard the massive observation vessel Dominion, thousands of alien dignitaries sipped exotic beverages and placed bets on holographic interfaces. The Games were the premier entertainment event across the Galactic Alliance, 27 species, all united by their appreciation for witnessing expertly orchestrated combat. And now, distinguished guests, the announcer's voice boomed through the vessel. The Kasari Imperium presents this cycle's special attraction. The gathered crowd of multi-limbed, chitinous, and tentacled beings turned their attention to the central display. A lone transport pod descended toward the planet's surface. For your entertainment, we have acquired a human specimen, Earth Sergeant Elias Knox, apparently once considered an elite warrior on that primitive world. Laughter rippled through the audience. Humans were a novelty, barely spacefaring, barely acknowledged. Their planet had been catalogued, but deemed unremarkable. Occasionally, specimens were collected for study or, in this case, amusement. Viscount Zern, the Kasari commander overseeing the Games, flashed his upper mandibles in what passed for a smile among his species. "I'm told this human survived 3 planetary conflicts," Zern announced, his voice tinged with mockery. "Let's see how long he lasts against actual warriors." In the observation lounge, bets flooded in. The longest odds gave the human 10 minutes of survival time. The most generous, 30 minutes. No one bet on an hour. The pod struck the surface of Morgath with calculated precision, sending dust billowing across the barren landscape. Inside, Sergeant Elias Knox opened his eyes. He was a compact man, 5 feet 10 inches of dense muscle and scar tissue. His dark hair was cropped short, military style, and his eyes were the color of wet stone. At 42, he'd spent more than half his life in combat zones. The last thing he remembered was an ambush in disputed territory back on Earth. Now, he was here, wherever here was. A synthetic voice filled the small pod. "Human combatant, you have been selected for participation in the Battleground Games. You will exit in 30 seconds. Survival is unlikely, but would be impressive." Elias took stock of his situation with practiced efficiency. He wore only a simple gray jumpsuit. No weapons, no supplies, no intel. The Games are being observed by 15 billion sentients across the Alliance. Your performance will reflect on your species. Good luck. The pod door slid open, revealing the alien landscape. Elias stepped out, squinting against the strange light. His military training kicked in immediately. Assess, adapt, survive. The air was breathable but thin, gravity slightly heavier than Earth's. He could work with that. Above, barely visible in the night sky, thousands of camera drones circled, watching, broadcasting. "Our human has emerged." The announcer's voice echoed across the planet and into billions of homes. Current survival estimate, 8 minutes. A roar came from Elias's left. He turned to see a massive creature, 9 feet tall, covered in scales, with 4 arms ending in serrated claws, charging toward him. The audience leaned forward. First Blood was always entertaining. Elias didn't run. He stood perfectly still, watching the creature's movement pattern. Years on battlefields had taught him one crucial lesson. Everything that lived had vulnerabilities. When the creature was 3 strides away, Elias dropped to the ground. The beast, surprised by the sudden disappearance of its target, stumbled. Elias rolled beneath it, spotting the unarmored underside. With a precision strike, he drove his fist upward into what he guessed was a nerve cluster. The creature howled, momentarily paralyzed. Elias scrambled up its back, wrapped his arms around what passed for its neck, and twisted with every ounce of strength he possessed. A sickening crack echoed across the wasteland. In the observation lounge, Silence fell. The human has eliminated Gornax the Eviscerator, the announcer said, his voice betraying surprise. With no weapons, using only manual combat techniques. Elias was already stripping the creature of its equipment. A serrated blade, a crude projectile weapon, a pouch containing what looked like medical supplies. 8 minutes have passed, the announcer noted. The human lives. Viscount Zern narrowed his compound eyes. Interesting, he chittered. Release the Hounds of Xerax. The games had begun in earnest. By hour 3, the betting pools had shifted dramatically. The question was no longer how long the human would survive, but how many opponents he would eliminate before falling. Elias had killed 17 combatants. He'd acquired better weapons, constructed rudimentary armor from fallen enemies, and, most worryingly to the game's organizers, begun moving with purpose rather than simply reacting. He's heading for the Eastern Quadrant, an aide informed Viscount Zern. That's where we keep the war slaves between matches. Zern waved a dismissive limb. Let him. They're barely combat capable. Perhaps they'll slow him down. The Eastern Quadrant was a sprawling compound of cages and containment fields. Inside were the dregs of the games, captured beings considered too weak for featured combat, but useful as cannon fodder. Elias approached cautiously, taking cover behind the ruins of what had once been a monumental statue. Through his scavenged monocular, he studied the guard patterns. 6 sentries, automated turrets, force fields. All designed to keep beings in, not out. He waited for Morgath's largest moon to slip behind clouds, then moved. The first guard died without a sound, a blade across the throat, or what passed for a throat in the four-eyed species. The second had time for a surprised gurgle before joining his comrade. Inside the command post, Elias found what he was looking for, the central control panel. The symbols were alien, but military systems followed patterns across cultures. Red usually meant active, green usually meant safe. He pressed what looked like the main override. Throughout the compound, force fields flickered and died. Cage doors slid open. Confused captives emerged, blinking at their sudden freedom. They were a motley collection, some humanoid, others distinctly not, all bearing the marks of mistreatment and neglect. "Who freed us?" asked a tall, willowy being with silvery skin. Elias stepped into view, weapons ready but not aimed. "My name is Elias Knox. Human. Earth." He spoke slowly, hoping the translator embedded in his pod had been standard issue for this sector of space. "I need fighters." The captives stared, some with fear, others with confusion, a few with the beginning embers of hope. A female stepped forward. She was humanoid but clearly alien. Her skin was cobalt blue, and intricate markings covered her exposed arms. Her eyes held the hardness of someone accustomed to combat. "I am Thalra of the Andromeda," she said. "Why would we fight for you, human?" Elias gestured toward the observation vessel, visible in the night sky. "I'm not asking you to fight for me. I'm offering you a chance to fight for yourselves. Against them. They have armies, technologies. We are nothing but sport to them." Elias allowed himself the first smile since arriving on this hell planet. "They think the same about me. 3 hours ago. I was dropped here to die for their amusement. Look around you." The freed captives glanced at the dead guards, at the disabled security systems. "You know this place," Elias continued. "You know its weaknesses. Together, we can turn their game against them." "And then what?" Thalra challenged. "Even if we survive today, the Alliance will simply send more forces. One problem at a time," Elias said. "First, we take the planet. Then we worry about keeping it." In the observation lounge, chaos erupted as the feeds showed the war slaves arming themselves. "What is happening?" demanded a Praetori diplomat, his eye stalks quivering with indignation. "This is not part of the scheduled entertainment." Viscount Zern clicked his mandibles nervously. A minor deviation. The human will be eliminated shortly. But privately, Zern was concerned. He opened a secure channel to his military chief. Deploy the Kasari Elite Guard. End this aberration. On the surface of Morgath, Elias was organizing his impromptu army. The war slaves might lack formal training, but they had something more valuable: intimate knowledge of the planet and its systems. The Kasari maintained 7 command bunkers across the surface. Thalra explained, sketching a rough map in the dirt. Each controls a sector of the games. Elias studied the layout. We need to capture one intact, for the communications equipment. The northern bunker is the most vulnerable, offered a multi-limbed being named Crix. It's automated during night cycles. Minimal guards. Then that's our first target, Elias decided. We move in 20 minutes. As they prepared, Elias approached Thalra. How long have you been here? 3 cycles, she replied, checking the charge on a scavenged weapon. My people refused to join the Alliance. This was the result. You were soldiers? Scholars, actually. I specialized in pre-FTL civilizations. A bitter smile crossed her features. Including yours. Ironically, humans are resilient. But the Alliance considers you primitive. Barely worth cataloging. Their mistake, Elias said simply. The assault on the northern bunker was swift and brutal. Elias had divided his forces, now numbering over 100, into strike teams, while the main force created a diversion at the front entrance. Elias led a small team through a maintenance tunnel, identified by one of the former captives. The Kasari guards never expected an attack from within their own facility. By the time they realized what was happening, Elias had secured the command center. Lock it down, he ordered as Thalra and Crix began accessing the systems. Done, Thalra reported moments later. We control this sector's defenses and communications. Elias leaned over the alien console. Can you tap into their broadcast network? The one showing the games? Thalra worked the controls. Yes, but what's the point? The entire Alliance is watching us. They'll send reinforcements as soon as they realize what's happening. Exactly, Elias said. They're watching. All of them. Which means we have their attention. Understanding dawned on Thalra's face. You want to send a message? More than that, Elias replied, his eyes reflecting the glow of the alien displays. I want to start a revolution. In the observation lounge, Viscount Zern was frantically trying to maintain order among the increasingly agitated dignitaries. I assure you, this deviation will be corrected immediately. The human and the escaped war slaves will be eliminated, and the games will continue as scheduled. Your assurances mean little, Viscount, hissed a Praetori diplomat. This is unprecedented. A single primitive species member has compromised your security. Before Zern could respond, the massive display screens flickered. The regular broadcast, showing the Kasari Elite Guard deploying across the planet, was replaced by a new image. The human, Elias Knox, stared directly into the camera. Behind him stood dozens of freed war slaves, armed and alert. To the Galactic Alliance, Elias began, his voice calm and measured. My name is Sergeant Elias Knox of Earth. You brought me here to die for your entertainment. That was your first mistake. Murmurs spread through the observation lounge. Your second mistake was assuming that cruelty makes you strong. It doesn't. It makes you vulnerable. Because those you oppress have nothing to lose. Viscount Zern began frantically signaling his technicians to cut the transmission. They responded with helpless gestures. They had lost control of the broadcast. As we speak, my forces are taking control of this planet. Your so-called games are over. Impossible, whispered an aide to Zern. He can't have enough fighters to... An alarm blared throughout the Dominion. On secondary displays, the dignitaries could see Kasari forces engaged in firefights across the surface of Morgath. You see us as primitives. Elias continued on screen. But we humans have one advantage. We've been killing each other for thousands of years. We've gotten very good at it. A nervous ripple passed through the audience. This message is for the war slaves, the oppressed, the conquered species across your alliance. What's happening on Morgath can happen anywhere. Today, we claim this planet as free territory, a sanctuary for anyone who wants to escape Alliance control. The transmission cut to images of Kasari bunkers falling one after another. War slaves overwhelming elite guards through sheer numbers and surprise. "How is this possible?" demanded Zern. "It's been less than 6 hours since we dropped him on the surface." "He's using our own systems against us," a technician explained. "The game's infrastructure, the drones, the automated defenses, the transport networks. He's hacked into everything." Back on the broadcast, Elias's face reappeared. "And to the leadership of the Alliance, you turned war into entertainment. Now see what real warfare looks like. Morgath is ours by sundown." The transmission cut off. In the silence that followed, a high-ranking Praetori turned to Viscount Zern. "Contact your military command. This insurgency must be crushed immediately." I can't," Zern admitted, his mandibles clicking nervously. "Communications with the surface are being jammed, and our landing vessels are reporting system failures." "Are you saying," the Praetori's voice rose dangerously, "that a single human has taken control of an entire planet in less than one local day?" Zern had no answer. On the surface of Morgath, Elias was coordinating the final assault on the Central Command bunker. With 6 of the 7 bunkers under their control, they had access to most of the planet's defensive systems. "Status report," he called to Thalra, who was monitoring communications. "The Kasari are in disarray," she replied, a note of disbelief in her voice. "We're actually winning. Their elite guard is falling back to the central bunker. They're abandoning the outer sectors." Elias nodded. "And the civilian technicians?" "Surrendering or fleeing to the evacuation points, as you predicted." "Good. Minimal casualties." Despite the brutal circumstances, Elias had insisted on offering quarter to non-combatants. "What about the orbital station?" Crix manipulated the sensor controls with his multiple limbs. "The Dominion is showing signs of preparation for departure, but they're experiencing difficulties." A grim smile touched Elias's lips. "Those old defense satellites we activated are causing them problems, I assume." "Yes," Crix confirmed. "They can't leave orbit without risking damage." "Perfect." Elias turned to address the gathered fighters, now numbering in the thousands, as more war slaves joined their cause. "The central bunker is our final objective. Once we take it, we control everything. The game's infrastructure, the planetary defenses, the communications network." A cheer went up from the assembled beings. "But make no mistake," Elias cautioned. "This is just the beginning. The Alliance won't let this stand. They'll send fleets, armies. Today we've one surprise. Tomorrow we'll need something more." "What more could we possibly need?" asked a skeptical voice from the crowd. "A symbol," Elias answered. "Something that spreads faster than ships can travel. An idea that can't be killed by conventional weapons." Thalra stepped forward. "You've given us that already," she said, her voice carrying across the chamber. "The human who conquered a planet between sunrise and sunset." "The Earth Warlord!" someone called out. Elias shook his head. "I'm just a soldier, and this isn't about me. It's about all of you. Everyone the Alliance thought was disposable." "Nevertheless," Thalra insisted, "stories will spread, and symbols have power." Before Elias could respond, an alert sounded from the command console. "The Kasari Elite Guard," Crix reported. "They're making their final stand at the central bunker. Defensive systems at maximum." Elias studied the tactical display. "They're expecting a frontal assault. Let's disappoint them." The central command bunker was the most heavily fortified structure on Morgath. a massive complex built into the side of a mountain, surrounded by multiple layers of force fields and automated weapon systems. It was designed to withstand planetary bombardment. But its designers had never anticipated an attack from someone who understood Earth-style asymmetric warfare. While the main rebel force engaged the bunker's outer defenses, drawing attention and fire, Elias led a small team to an overlooked vulnerability. Every complex needed ventilation, even one built by advanced aliens. These shafts were designed to filter atmospheric contaminants, explained a former maintenance slave named Drevin. They lead directly to the Environmental Control Center. And from there, Elias asked, access to the entire facility. The infiltration team crawled through narrow tunnels, avoiding sensor arrays that Drevin helped them identify. When they reached the Environmental Control Center, they encountered minimal resistance, just 2 technicians who surrendered immediately. Central Command is 3 levels down, Drevin informed them, accessing a terminal. But it's heavily guarded. Elias studied the facility schematics. We don't need to fight our way in. Can you access the life support systems from here? Drevin's multiple eyes blinked in surprise. Yes, but... Reduce oxygen levels in all security sections by 30%. Not enough to cause unconsciousness, but enough to impair judgment and reaction time. Clever, Thalra remarked as Drevin implemented the changes. Within minutes, alarms began sounding throughout the facility as security personnel reported dizziness and confusion. Elias led his team directly toward Central Command, encountering only disorganized resistance. The command center itself was sealed behind massive doors, but with the security systems compromised, Drevin was able to override the locks. As the doors slid open, Elias came face to face with Viscount Zern, who had transported down from the Dominion to personally coordinate the defense. Human, Zern spat, his mandibles clicking furiously. You have no idea what you've done. The Alliance will burn this planet to ash for this insurrection. Maybe, Elias acknowledged, training his weapon on the Kasari commander. But everyone will know why. That a single, primitive human and an army of your discarded slaves took control of your precious games. You think this is some kind of victory? Zern's compound eyes gleamed with hatred. This is merely a momentary setback for the Alliance. We span thousands of worlds, millions of ships. You've accomplished nothing but your own destruction. Elias approached until he stood directly before the Viscount. You're wrong. I've accomplished exactly what I set out to do. I've shown everyone watching that you're not invincible. With a swift motion, he seized Zern by his ceremonial collar and dragged him to the central communications console. Now, you're going to help me send one more message. Across the Alliance, billions of beings watched as their entertainment feeds were once again hijacked. This time, they saw Viscount Zern, Supreme Commander of the Battleground Games, standing rigidly beside the human who had turned their afternoon diversion into an unprecedented crisis. Citizens of the Alliance, Elias began, his voice calm but commanding. The games are over, permanently. Morgath is now declared free territory, under the protection of its rightful inhabitants. He gestured to Zern. Your commander has something to say. The Kasari visibly struggled, his pride warring with the very real threat of the weapon pressed against his thorax. Finally, he spoke. I, Viscount Zern, recognize the sovereignty of Morgath and its new government. All Alliance forces are ordered to stand down and withdraw. And the war slaves? Elias prompted. Zern's mandibles clicked in suppressed rage. All prisoners of the games are hereby emancipated. Thank you, Viscount, Elias said, before turning back to the camera. To the Alliance leadership, the Dominion will be permitted to depart once all non-combatants are evacuated. Any military action against Morgath will be met with the full force of our planetary defenses. He paused, letting his next words carry weight. And to those across the Alliance who live under oppression, remember this day. Remember that change is possible, even against impossible odds. The transmission ended. In the command center, Elias turned to his companions. Secure the Viscount. He's our insurance policy until the Dominion leaves orbit. As his orders were carried out, Thalra approached. You did it, she said quietly. In less than one planetary rotation, you've liberated an entire world. Elias gazed out through the command center's viewports at the rugged landscape of Morgath, now bathed in the light of the setting sun. No, he corrected her. We did it. All of us. What happens now? He considered the question. Now comes the hard part. Building something worth fighting for. In the hours that followed, the rebels consolidated their control over Morgath's systems. The Kasari forces, deprived of leadership and facing an enemy that controlled the planet's infrastructure, had little choice but to surrender or retreat to the evacuation points. By midnight, reports confirmed that the Dominion had been permitted to break orbit, carrying away the dignitaries and non-combatants. The games were officially over, leaving Morgath in the hands of its former slaves and one human soldier. In what had once been the Viscount's private chambers, Elias stood before a gathering of representatives from the various species that had fought alongside him. We need to establish a functional government, he told them, not based on strength or cruelty, but on equality and mutual protection. The Alliance won't let this stand, warned a former slave from a species known as the Vrex. They'll send warships. Let them come, replied a scarred warrior from the outer colonies. We control the planetary defense grid now. Defense isn't enough, Elias cautioned. We need to spread the word. Make allies. Every oppressed world, every marginalized species. They need to know what happened here. Thalra, who had emerged as his most trusted lieutenant, nodded in agreement. I'll coordinate communications. We'll use the game's own broadcast network to spread our message. Good, Elias said. Meanwhile, we need to inventory our resources, food, medicine, weapons. We're on our own for now. As the meeting continued, plans taking shape for the fledgling Free State, a junior technician entered with an urgent report. Commander, she addressed Elias, the title having been bestowed upon him by general consensus. We're detecting transmissions across the Alliance communication network. News of our uprising is spreading faster than anticipated. What's the response? Elias asked. Mixed. Official channels are denouncing us as terrorists and criminals. But on secure frequencies, we're receiving encoded messages of support from dozens of worlds. A murmur ran through the gathered representatives. And that's not all, the technician continued. We've intercepted Alliance military communications. They're recalling fleets from frontier sectors. There's talk of containment and example setting. How much time do we have? Elias asked. Based on their fleet positions, 3 days at most before they can mount a coordinated assault. Elias absorbed this information with the calm of a veteran who had faced impossible odds before. Then we have work to do, he said simply. Late that night, after the others had departed to their various duties, Elias found himself alone on a balcony overlooking the war-scarred landscape of Morgath. Above, the 3 moons cast their strange light over what was now, improbably, his domain. He heard soft footsteps behind him and turned to see Thalra approaching. You should rest, she advised. It's been 26 hours since you arrived on this planet. I'll rest when we're secure, he replied, turning back to the view. Thalra joined him at the railing. The others have started calling you the Earth Warlord, she said. Some of the more mystically inclined species believe you were sent by their gods. Elias shook his head. I'm just a soldier who got lucky. No, Thalra countered. You're something the Alliance has never encountered before. A human who understands both warfare and freedom. They stood in silence for a moment, contemplating the enormity of what they had begun. Why did you do it? Thalra finally asked. You could have simply fought to survive. Why risk everything to free slaves you'd never met? Elias considered the question. On Earth, I fought in wars that never seemed to end. Conflicts over resources, ideology, territory. I was good at it, the fighting, but I never felt like I was changing anything. He gestured to the landscape below, where former slaves were now patrolling as free citizens. Here, for the first time, I saw a chance to fight for something that mattered, to turn their game of death into a real revolution. And if we fail? Thalra asked softly. Then we fail fighting for freedom, not dying for entertainment. Elias turned to face her. But I don't intend to fail. The Alliance has never been defeated, she reminded him. A grim smile touched his lips. Neither had I, until they decided to make me their plaything. Thalra studied him with newfound respect. You really believe we can win? I believe we already have, Elias replied. They wanted a spectacle. We gave them a revolution. Above them, the stars gleamed coldly in the night sky. Thousands of points of light representing worlds that would soon hear of what had happened on Morgath. Of how a single human, dropped into a war zone for sport, had taken a planet by sundown. Aboard the retreating Dominion, the highest-ranking Alliance officials gathered in a secure conference room. The mood was somber, the implications of the day's events still unfolding. This can never reach the core worlds, insisted a Praetori minister. The narrative must be controlled. Too late, replied a Kasari intelligence officer. Unauthorized transmissions are being detected throughout the mid-rim. The story is spreading. Then we crush them, a military commander stated flatly. Make an example of Morgath. An older official, one of the founding species of the Alliance, shook his head slowly. You're missing the point. This isn't about one planet or one human. It's about the symbol they've created. The others fell silent, awaiting elaboration. For centuries, we've maintained order through the perception of invincibility. The elder continued. Today, that perception was shattered, not by a fleet or an army, but by a single primitive being and an improvised force of slaves. What are you suggesting? The military commander demanded. That we allow this insurrection to stand. I'm suggesting that military force alone won't solve this problem. The human has given hope to the hopeless. And hope? The elder's voice dropped to almost a whisper. Hope is the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy. As dawn broke over Morgath, Elias stood before the assembled thousands, beings of dozens of species, all united by their newfound freedom and the shared experience of overthrowing their oppressors. The Alliance will come, he told them without sugarcoating the truth. They'll come with ships and weapons beyond anything we have here. They'll demand our surrender and threaten our destruction. A tense silence fell over the crowd. But they've forgotten something important, Elias continued, his voice gaining strength. They've forgotten that freedom, once tasted, becomes worth any price. They've forgotten that beings who were willing to die in their games for nothing will certainly be willing to fight for everything. A murmur of agreement rippled through the assembly. We have 3 days before their fleets arrive. 3 days to prepare, to fortify, to send our message to every corner of the Alliance. 3 days to transform from escaped slaves into citizens of the first truly free world in this sector of space. He gestured to the command team standing beside him, Thalra, Crix, Drevin, and others who had distinguished themselves during the uprising. These are your leaders, chosen not by birth or wealth or species, but by their actions. Together, we will defend what we've built here. A cheer went up from the crowd, tentative at first, then swelling into a roar that echoed across the scarred landscape of Morgath. As the assembly dispersed to their duties, Elias turned to his command team. Now, he said, let's make sure we live up to their expectations. The next 3 days were a frenzy of activity. Under Elias's direction, the former game's infrastructure was converted into a defensive network. Weapons were distributed, training organized, communications established with sympathetic factions throughout the sector. Most importantly, they continued broadcasting stories of their uprising, Manifestos of freedom. Practical advice for resistance. The Alliance tried to jam their signals, but the rebels adapted, using the game's entertainment satellites to reach worlds that had never received unauthorized transmissions before. On the eve of the expected Alliance assault, Elias received an unexpected report. "Commander," Crix called, his multiple limbs working frantically at a communications console. "We're detecting ships entering the system." "Alliance?" Elias asked, tensing. "No," Crix replied, his voice betraying confusion. "Their signatures don't match any known Alliance military vessels, and they're responding to our identification requests with a freedom code." "What?" Elias moved to the console. "They're claiming to be representatives from the Outer Rim Independence Coalition. Apparently, they've brought supplies and volunteers." Thalra, who had been organizing defense teams, joined them. "The Outer Rim has been in cold conflict with the Alliance for decades," she explained. "They must see an opportunity in supporting us." "Or they genuinely believe in what we're doing," Elias suggested. "Either way," Thalra said, "we've just gained allies." Throughout that day, more ships arrived, not just from the Outer Rim, but from worlds within the Alliance itself. Smugglers bringing weapons, merchants with medical supplies, even a few military deserters offering their expertise. By nightfall, Morgoth's orbital space was filled with a makeshift fleet of supporters. Not enough to defeat an Alliance armada, but enough to demonstrate that the rebellion had expanded beyond a single planet. In his command center, Elias reviewed the latest intelligence with his senior staff. "The Alliance fleet will arrive tomorrow at approximately 0800 hours, he informed them. 20 capital ships, support vessels, troop carriers. Our defenses are as ready as they can be," Thalra reported. "The planetary shield will withstand initial bombardment, and our ground forces are positioned to repel landing parties." "And our message?" Elias asked. Drevin, now head of communications, straightened proudly. "Transmitted to over 3,000 worlds. We've received confirmations of solidarity actions on at least 40 Alliance planets. Protests, sabotage, information releases." Elias nodded. "Good. Remember, our goal isn't just to defend Morgoth, it's to change the narrative. Every hour we hold out against their fleet is another hour our message spreads." "You really think stories can stand against warships?" asked a skeptical officer. "Stories toppled empires on my world long before we had warships," Elias replied. "Never underestimate the power of a compelling narrative." As the meeting concluded, Thalra remained behind. "The volunteers are asking to meet you," she told Elias. "The Earth warlord who conquered a planet in a day." Elias sighed. "That name again." "You can't fight it," she said with a small smile. "Symbols have a way of taking on lives of their own." "I'm not a symbol," he insisted. "I'm just a soldier who saw an opportunity." "You're both," Thalra countered. "And tomorrow, when the Alliance arrives, we'll need both the soldier's strategy and the symbol's inspiration." Elias knew she was right. In the space of a few days, he had become something more than himself, a focal point for resistance, a catalyst for change. "Very well," he conceded. "Arrange the meeting." That evening, Elias addressed the volunteers who had come from across the sector to support Morgoth's cause. They were a diverse group, hardened mercenaries, idealistic youth, former slaves seeking revenge, merchants protecting their interests. "I won't lie to you," he told them. "Tomorrow will be difficult. The Alliance has never tolerated defiance on this scale. They'll use everything in their arsenal to crush us and everyone associated with us." The assembled beings listened intently. "But what they don't understand is that we've already won. By standing here together, beings from dozens of worlds, hundreds of cultures, we've proven that their system of division and oppression can be overcome." He surveyed the faces before him, some familiar from Earth-like species, others utterly alien, but all united in common cause. "Tomorrow, defend this planet not just with weapons, But with the knowledge that every moment we resist, our idea spreads further. The Alliance can destroy Morgath, but they cannot destroy what we've started here. As dawn broke on the fourth day of Morgath's independence, the Alliance fleet appeared at the edge of the system, a formation of massive warships, their hulls gleaming in the light of the distant sun. In the command center, Elias watched their approach on the tactical displays. "Right on schedule," he remarked calmly. Thalra joined him, her expression tense but determined. "Planetary shields at maximum, all defense systems online. Our volunteer fleet is taking position in the outer orbit." "And the contingency measures?" "In place," she confirmed. "If Morgath falls, the broadcasts continue from secure locations throughout the sector." A communications officer called out, "Incoming transmission from the Alliance flagship." "Put it through," Elias ordered. The main screen flickered, revealing the stern countenance of an Alliance admiral, a member of the Praetori species. His eye stalks rigid with authority. "This is Admiral Vexnor of the Alliance Enforcement Fleet," the alien announced. "We demand the immediate surrender of all insurgent forces on Morgath and the extradition of the human instigator known as Elias Nox." Elias stepped forward, facing the camera. "This is Commander Nox of Free Morgath. We reject your demands. This planet and its people are no longer under Alliance jurisdiction." The Admiral's eye stalks quivered with barely contained rage. "You have 1 hour to reconsider before we commence orbital bombardment. The Alliance will not tolerate terrorism and insurrection." "Terrorism," Elias repeated, his voice hardening. "Was it terrorism when you enslaved beings for your entertainment? When you turned war into a spectator sport?" "Your primitive moral objections are irrelevant," the Admiral dismissed. 1 hour, Commander. Then we will make an example of Morgath that the galaxy will not soon forget." The transmission cut off. "Well," Elias said to his assembled command staff, "at least we know where we stand." "Do we respond to their ultimatum?" asked Drevin. "Yes," Elias decided, "but not just to them. Broadcast on all frequencies, to every world within range." When the systems were ready, Elias once again addressed the camera, but this time, his audience was the wider galaxy, not just the Alliance leadership. "People of the galaxy," he began. "My name is Elias Nox. 4 days ago, I was brought to the planet Morgath to die for entertainment in what the Alliance calls the Battleground Games. Instead, along with thousands of formerly enslaved beings, we liberated this world." He paused, letting his words carry. "The Alliance fleet now threatening us claims we are terrorists and criminals. But I ask you, who are the real criminals? Those who fight for freedom, or those who enslave others for sport?" Behind him, screens displayed images from the games, beings forced to fight and die while crowds cheered. "In 1 hour, the Alliance will attack Morgath. They will try to crush our movement before it can spread. But they've already failed, because our message has reached thousands of worlds." Elias leaned closer to the camera, his expression intense. "To everyone watching who has suffered under Alliance oppression, you are not alone. What we've done here can be done anywhere. Freedom is possible. Resistance is possible." He straightened, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had faced death countless times and emerged victorious. "To the Alliance leadership, your threats do not frighten us. Your weapons cannot kill an idea. Morgath stands free, today, and every day hereafter." As the transmission ended, Thalra approached Elias. "That will definitely get their attention." "Good," he replied. "The longer they focus on us, the more time other worlds have to organize." The command center became a flurry of activity as final defensive preparations were made. Weapons were checked, shields reinforced, emergency protocols reviewed. Exactly 1 hour after the ultimatum, the Alliance fleet began to move into attack formation. "They're launching fighters," reported Crix from the sensor station. "Multiple squadrons approaching planetary shields." "Defensive batteries online," another officer called. Volunteer fleet moving to intercept. Elias watched the tactical displays, his mind calculating possibilities, weighing options. This was familiar territory, the calm before battle, the strategic assessment of forces. "They're testing our defenses," he observed, as the first wave of Alliance fighters probed the planetary shields. "Looking for weaknesses before committing their capital ships." "Standard Alliance tactics," Thalra agreed. "They expect us to exhaust our resources against their first wave. Then, let's surprise them," Elias decided. "Hold the main defensive batteries in reserve. Let them think we're weaker than we are." The strategy worked. After the initial probing attacks encountered only minimal resistance, the Alliance fleet grew bolder. Their capital ships moved closer, preparing for the main assault. "They're charging their primary weapons," Crix reported, his multiple limbs working frantically across the sensor controls. "Bombardment imminent." "Now," Elias ordered. "All batteries, fire! Volunteer fleet, execute pattern Omega." Across Morgath's surface, concealed defensive batteries revealed themselves, unleashing a coordinated barrage against the Alliance warships. Simultaneously, the seemingly disorganized volunteer fleet formed into attack formations, striking at the exposed flanks of the enemy armada. In the command center, a cheer went up as sensors showed 3 Alliance vessels suffering critical damage. "They didn't expect coordinated resistance," Thalra observed, a note of satisfaction in her voice. "They thought we were just escaped slaves and a primitive human." "Their mistake," Elias replied, echoing what he had said days earlier. But the moment of triumph was short-lived. The Alliance fleet, recovering from the initial surprise, began a systematic bombardment of the planetary shields. Alarms blared throughout the command center. "Shield integrity at 70% and dropping," reported an engineer. "They're concentrating fire on the northern quadrant." "Redirect power from secondary systems," Elias ordered, "and move our reserve batteries to reinforce that sector." Hour after hour, the battle raged. The Alliance fleet, with its superior firepower and numbers, gradually wore down Morgath's defenses. But the defenders fought with the desperation of those who had tasted freedom and refused to relinquish it. By nightfall, the situation had become critical. The planetary shields were failing in multiple sectors, and the volunteer fleet had been reduced to a handful of vessels still capable of combat. In the command center, now operating on emergency power, Elias gathered his senior staff. "Status report," he demanded. "Shield integrity below 30%, Thalra reported grimly. "Breaches in sectors 3, 7, and 9. The Alliance is preparing landing craft." "Casualties?" "Heavy among the volunteer fleet. Moderate on the ground so far. But once they land in force." Elias nodded, absorbing the information. "And our broadcasts?" "Still transmitting," Drevin confirmed. "We've established relay stations on sympathetic worlds. Even if Morgath falls, the message continues." "Good." Elias studied the tactical displays, searching for options. "We need to concentrate our remaining forces at these landing zones. Make them pay for every meter of ground." As the staff dispersed to implement his orders, Thalra remained. "We can't win this battle," she said quietly. "You know that." "Winning was never the objective," Elias replied. "Not in the conventional sense." "Then what was?" He gestured to a secondary display, showing reports from across the Alliance, protests on core worlds, uprisings on frontier planets, military defections. This, creating a moment that can't be ignored or forgotten, showing everyone that resistance is possible. Thalra considered his words. "A noble goal, but it won't save the people fighting and dying out there right now." "No," Elias agreed, his expression somber. "Which is why we need to consider evacuation. Get as many non-combatants off-planet as possible before the shields fail completely. The Alliance will intercept evacuation ships." "Not if they're distracted." Elias turned to the tactical display. "We need to give them something else to worry about." As they discussed options, an urgent communication came through from one of their outer sensor stations. "Commander!" The officer's voice was tense with excitement. "We're detecting new ship signatures entering the system. Massive energy readings." "Alliance reinforcements?" Elias asked, his heart sinking. "No, sir. The configuration doesn't match any known Alliance vessels. They're hailing us." "Put it through." The main screen flickered, revealing a being unlike any Elias had encountered before, crystalline in appearance, its voice resonating with harmonic overtones. "Free Morgath. This is Admiral Zixtel of the Cerulean Collective. We have monitored your struggle and deemed it worthy of intervention." Thalra gasped. "The Cerulean Collective? They've maintained isolation from the Alliance for centuries." On screen, the crystalline being continued. "Your broadcast reached our monitoring stations. The courage displayed by your forces, particularly the adaptation of a singular non-alliance species to lead such resistance, has been impressive. We welcome your assistance, Admiral." Elias responded cautiously. "But I must ask why a historically isolationist power would involve itself in our conflict. The Alliance has encroached upon our buffer zones for decades," the Admiral explained. "We have long sought an opportunity to discourage their expansion. Your resistance provides a convenient nexus for multiple interests to align. Political calculation rather than idealism," Elias realized. But he was in no position to refuse help. "We accept your intervention with gratitude," he said formally. "Stand by," the Admiral instructed. "Our vessels will engage the Alliance fleet momentarily." The screen went dark. "The Cerulean Collective," Thalra whispered, awe in her voice. "Their technology is said to be centuries beyond the Alliance." "Let's hope those rumors are true," Elias replied, turning back to the tactical displays. What followed was beyond anything he could have anticipated. The collective vessels, just 3 in number but each massive in scale, moved into position above Morgath. Energy fields of impossible complexity bloomed around them, extending to encompass the failing planetary shields. "Our shield integrity is rising," reported a bewildered engineer. "They're reinforcing our defenses somehow." Then the collective ships opened fire. Their weapons bore little resemblance to conventional Alliance technology. Beams of coherent energy, so focused they appeared almost solid, lanced out toward the enemy fleet. Where they struck, Alliance vessels simply ceased to function, their systems disabled rather than destroyed. "They're using some kind of targeted electromagnetic pulse," Crix observed in fascination. "Shutting down the Alliance ships without destroying them." Within minutes, the battle had transformed. The once mighty Alliance fleet hung motionless in space, their weapons and engines disabled. Only their life support systems appeared to remain functional. On the communication channels, panic spread among the Alliance commanders as they found themselves suddenly helpless. The crystalline Admiral reappeared on screen. "The threat has been neutralized. The Alliance vessels will require approximately 72 hours to restore their systems. I suggest you use this time wisely." "You're not destroying them?" Elias asked, surprised. "Unnecessary destruction is inefficient," the Admiral replied simply. "And the Alliance will be more destabilized by defeat than by martyrdom." "Thank you, Admiral. We are in your debt." The crystalline being made a gesture that might have been dismissal or acknowledgement. "The Collective will maintain a presence in this system for the immediate future. We wish to observe how your experiment in freedom develops." As the transmission ended, cheers erupted throughout the command center. The impossible had happened. Morgath had survived its first direct confrontation with Alliance military power. "Commander," Thalra said, using Elias's new title with a mixture of respect and wonder. "It appears we've acquired a powerful ally." "Or a new overlord," Elias cautioned. "The Collective has its own agenda. But for now, we'll take the breathing room they've given us." He turned to address the entire command staff. "This isn't over. The Alliance will return with greater forces, better prepared for both us and the collective. But today, we've shown the galaxy something important, that the Alliance can be defeated. In the days that followed, Morgath transformed from a besieged rebel outpost into the center of a growing movement. Ships arrived from throughout the sector, refugees seeking sanctuary, idealists joining the cause, merchants sensing opportunity in a new power dynamic. With the Alliance fleet temporarily neutralized and the Cerulean Collective maintaining a protective presence, Elias and his council focused on building the foundations of their fledgling state. Laws were drafted, resources allocated, defensive systems reinforced. Most importantly, they continued broadcasting, not just propaganda, but practical information. How to organize resistance, how to disable Alliance security systems, how to establish secure communications, tactical knowledge that Elias had accumulated through years of warfare, now shared with anyone willing to listen. 1 week after the failed Alliance assault, Elias stood on the balcony of what had once been the Viscount's palace, surveying the rapidly changing landscape of Morgath, where there had been only ruins and battle zones. New structures were rising. Former slaves were becoming citizens, warriors becoming builders. Thalra joined him, carrying a data tablet. "The latest reports," she said, handing it to him. 17 more worlds have declared independence from the Alliance. The outer territories are in open revolt. Elias reviewed the information with mixed emotions. Pride in what they had accomplished. Concern for the challenges ahead. "And the Alliance response?" "Their leadership is in disarray," Thalra reported. "The military is demanding more resources to crush the rebellions, while diplomatic factions are arguing for negotiation. Their consensus-based system is paralyzing them." "That won't last," Elias warned. "Eventually, they'll unite around a strategy, and when they do, they'll come back with everything they have. By then, we'll be stronger too," Thalra countered. "More allies, better defenses, perhaps even more intervention from the collective." Elias wasn't convinced. "We can't rely on outside protection forever. Sooner or later, Morgath will have to stand on its own." "It will," Thalra assured him, "because of what you've built here." "What we've built," he corrected her. "All of us." He turned from the view, facing Thalra directly. "There's something I need to discuss with you, with the Council." "You're thinking of leaving," she guessed, surprising him with her perception. "How did you know?" "Because I understand symbols," she replied. "The Earth Warlord who liberated Morgath has served his purpose here. Now he needs to carry the flame elsewhere." Elias nodded slowly. "As long as I remain, Morgath will be a target. The Alliance will focus everything on capturing or killing me. But if I move on, establish resistance cells on other worlds." "You divide their attention," Thalra finished. "Create multiple fronts they can't possibly contain." "Exactly." She studied him for a moment, her alien features difficult for him to read. "The Council will resist. The people see you as their leader, their protector." "They don't need me," Elias insisted. "They have you, Crix, Dreven, all the others who fought alongside them. Leaders who understand this world, these people." "And what about you?" Thalra asked softly. "After everything you've accomplished here, where will you go?" Elias turned back to the horizon, where the sun was setting in a blaze of alien colors. "Wherever I can do the most damage to the system that thought dropping one human into a war zone for fun was acceptable." That evening, Elias presented his plan to the Council. As Thalra had predicted, there was resistance, emotional appeals for him to remain, strategic arguments about maintaining unity, concerns about morale if the legendary Earth Warlord departed. "I understand your concerns," he told them after listening patiently. "But consider the larger picture. What began here on Morgath has spread beyond anything we could have imagined. Dozens of worlds in open rebellion. Thousands more watching, waiting for their moment. He activated a holographic display showing the Alliance territories, with rebellion hotspots highlighted in red. These movements need coordination, strategy, leadership. They need the tactical knowledge that helped us succeed here. Send emissaries, suggested one council member. Share your knowledge without risking yourself. Elias shook his head. Information isn't enough. They need a symbol, someone who has already defeated the Alliance once. The Earth Warlord, Crix acknowledged. A title I never wanted, Elias said with a wry smile. But one I can use to unite these scattered resistances into something the Alliance can't crush. Thalra, who had remained silent throughout the discussion, finally spoke. Commander Knox is right. Morgath is secure for now. But the movement we've started needs to grow beyond this single world. And symbols have power beyond mere information. Gradually, the Council came to accept the logic of his argument. Plans were made, preparations begun. A small, fast vessel was equipped for Elias's journey, nondescript enough to avoid attention, advanced enough to evade pursuit. On his final night on Morgath, Elias walked alone through the areas that had once been the battlegrounds of the games. The scars of combat were still visible, but new growth was already beginning to emerge from the damaged soil. Life reclaiming what had been a theater of death. As he completed his circuit and returned to the central complex, he found Thalra waiting for him. One last walk? She asked. One last look, he corrected, to remember what we fought for. They walked in companionable silence for a time. Two beings from worlds separated by vast distances, but united by common purpose. I've been thinking about Earth, Thalra said eventually. Your world doesn't know what you've accomplished here. They don't even know I'm alive, Elias replied, or that any of this exists. Does that bother you, being cut off from your home? He considered the question. Home stopped being a place for me long ago. It became a purpose instead. Fighting? Protecting, he corrected. Making sure others don't have to fight if possible, but standing ready when necessary. Thalra nodded in understanding. The Andromini have a concept, Kethrai, the guardian who walks between worlds, belonging nowhere but defending everywhere. I like that, Elias said. Kethrai. They reached the landing pad where his ship waited, fueled and ready for departure at dawn. The Council has named me interim leader, Thalra informed him, until proper elections can be organized. They chose well, Elias said with genuine approval. You understand both what we're fighting against and what we're fighting for. Because of you, she replied. You showed us it was possible. He shook his head. I just lit the spark. You were all ready to burn. As the first light of dawn touched the horizon, Elias prepared to board his ship. The Council had gathered to see him off, along with representatives from the various species that now called Morgath home. Where will you go first? Drevin asked. Better that you don't know, Elias replied. If the Alliance captures any of you, they can't reveal what they don't know. He addressed the assembled group one final time. What you've built here is just the beginning. Protect it. Nurture it. Show the galaxy that freedom isn't just a concept, but a reality worth fighting for. And you? Asked Crix. Will you return? Elias smiled. When the time is right, when the Alliance is ready to fall. With final handshakes and unfamiliar alien gestures of farewell, Elias boarded his ship. The engines hummed to life, and moments later, the vessel rose into the morning sky, quickly becoming a dwindling point of light. In the command center, Thalra watched the ship's trajectory on the tracking systems. When it reached the edge of the system and prepared to jump to faster-than-light travel, she opened a communication channel. Safe journey, Commander, she said. May your battles be victorious. Take care of Morgath, came Elias's reply. I'll see you when the war is won. His ship vanished from the sensors, bound for distant worlds where the spark of rebellion waited to be kindled into flame. On the observation vessel that had once been the Dominion, now repurposed as a diplomatic mission from the Alliance, A senior official watched recordings of Elias Knox's departure from Morgath. "He's gone, then," the official remarked to his aide, "to spread his insurrection elsewhere." "Should we alert the fleet?" the aide inquired. "Attempt to track his vessel?" The official considered for a moment, then shook his head. "No. The Alliance High Command has a new strategy. Let him go where he will. Each world he visits becomes a potential trap. And Morgath, the Cerulean Collective? Complications, to be sure, but manageable ones." The official's expression darkened. "What isn't manageable is the symbol they've created. A single human who defied an empire. That narrative will inspire rebellion long after the man himself is gone." "What do we do?" The official turned away from the display. "We create a counter-narrative. The rebel becomes the terrorist. The liberator becomes the destroyer. We make the galaxy fear him more than they fear us." "Will that work?" the aide asked doubtfully. "Perhaps not," the official admitted. "But one thing is certain. The Alliance will never again make the mistake of underestimating humanity." As Elias's ship entered the vast emptiness between star systems, he reviewed the intelligence reports gathered by Morgath's operatives. Dozens of worlds in various stages of unrest, hundreds of potential allies, thousands of targets. The Alliance had thought dropping one human into a war zone for fun would provide an afternoon's entertainment. Instead, it had ignited a revolution that threatened their entire power structure. Elias set course for the nearest rebellion hotspot, a mining colony on the edge of Alliance space. There, he would find new allies, new resources, new battles to fight. The war had only just begun.